The rain came down like nails on a coffin lid, sharp, cold, and unrelenting. Mud clung to the hem of her white dress, once a symbol of purity and promise, now little more than a soaked shroud dragging her deeper into the earth. Her veil plastered against her cheeks, hiding the tears she was too tired to wipe away. He had left her there. At the altar. In the storm. Alone. Some said the prairie could kill a soul faster than a bullet, and that night she believed it. Every clap of thunder felt like judgment. Every flash of lightning reminded her of the way his eyes had shifted at the last moment, cold and empty, before he turned his back and rode away. She had been left in the rain, left with the weight of a promise broken before it ever had a chance to bloom. She would have sunk down in that muddy street, knees in the mire, heart cracking open to the storm, had it not been for the voice. A tiny voice. You came from heaven. She turned slowly, her hair whipping against her face in the wind. A little girl stood barefoot in the muck, her hair a wild tangle of copper, freckles scattered across her pale cheeks like dusting from God's hand. The child stared at her as though she were some celestial creature fallen to earth, a vision in white ruined by the storm. No, child, the woman whispered, her voice raw from silence. Not heaven. But the girl didn't move. She didn't run back into the saloon light behind her or call for her ma. She simply looked with wide, unblinking eyes that cut through the veil better than any man's gaze ever had. And for a fleeting second, the bride thought maybe she wasn't abandoned, not completely. The sound of boots striking wood snapped her back. Doors slammed open. Drunken laughter spilled from the saloon, followed by the harsh scrape of a chair dragging. Men came out into the night, squinting at the figure in the rain. Well, look what we got here, one slurred, his teeth yellow in the lantern glow. A bride without a groom. Another spat into the mud. Looks like he knew better than to chain himself down. Their laughter clawed at her worse than the storm. She stood frozen, her fingers twisting the soaked fabric at her sides, unsure if her legs could even carry her away. The little girl moved closer, small hand tugging gently at the edge of her ruined gown. Don't listen to them, the child said softly, her voice steady in a way that didn't belong to a girl her age. But the men weren't finished. One stepped off the boardwalk, boots sinking into the mud, eyes lingering on her with the hunger of a wolf circling prey. She don't got a man now, he said, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. What's the law say about that? Ain't no law here. The girl's hand tightened. Come with me. Before the bride could answer, the child tugged, hard, and she stumbled forward, away from the jeers. They ran, or rather, the girl ran and she staggered, down a narrow alley, through puddles that swallowed her shoes and shadows that twisted like claws. Behind them, the men laughed louder, but none followed. The girl led her to the back of a shack, a place barely more than 4 walls and a roof sagging under the storm's weight. Inside, it smelled of wet wood and smoke. A tiny cot sat against the wall, and a single candle burned low, its flame stubborn against the storm. The bride collapsed onto a stool, her body trembling, her heart thundering louder than the skies. She had no words, not for the girl, not for herself. You look like the angels Mama used to tell me about, the girl said matter-of-factly, kneeling by her side. But angels don't cry, do they? The bride swallowed hard. Some do. Silence hung between them, broken only by the storm hammering against the shack. She wanted to ask where the girls' parents were, why she was alone in such a place, but her tongue was heavy. The child seemed untouched by fear, as though she had lived her whole life inside storms. The next morning, the sun rose sharp and golden, turning the mud into steam and the streets into mirrors of light. But the bride could not face the town. Not yet. Word had already spread. She was the girl in white who'd been left, the virgin bride abandoned like a stray dog. Still, she could not stay hidden. The child, whose name was Elsie, dragged her by the hand into the day. She walked with her head down, veil gone, hair undone, and though whispers curled around her like smoke, Elsie's grip never faltered. That's when she saw him. Not the man who left her. Another. Tall, broad, his hat pulled low, his coat long and dark as sin. He leaned against a post near the blacksmith's, eyes fixed on her with a gaze that cut sharper than steel. Who's that? She asked, voice barely above a breath. Elsie glanced his way. That's Mr. Harlan. Folks say he's killed more men than he's buried. He don't smile. Don't talk much either. But Harlan didn't look away. He didn't mock. Didn't laugh. His stare lingered as though he saw not a ruined bride but something else entirely. For the first time since the rain, she felt her spine straighten. She didn't know why. By sundown, whispers turned to talk, and talk turned to threats. The men from the night before hadn't forgotten. They cornered her outside the general store, 3 of them, reeking of whiskey and grudge. A bride without a husband's just loose stock, one sneered, grabbing her wrist. Before she could cry out, before Elsie could scream, a shot cracked the air. The man's hat flew clean off his head, spinning into the dust. His grip loosened, and he stumbled back. Silence followed, heavy and choking. Harlan stood at the end of the street, gun still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. His voice rolled low, like thunder after a storm. "Touch her again, and you won't get your hat back." The men scattered like rats. She stood trembling, heart pounding so loud she feared the whole town could hear it. Harlan holstered his gun and walked away without another word, vanishing into the shadows of the saloon. That night, she sat by Elsie's cot, staring at the candle flame while the little girl slept. She wondered if God had sent her an angel after all, not the kind in white, but the kind with a gun, a shadow cut from the land itself. The days stretched on. Rumors grew. Some said Harlan had taken a liking to her. Others said she'd bewitched him. But the truth was simpler, darker. He hadn't saved her for kindness. He hadn't saved her for pity. He had saved her because he knew what it meant to be left in the rain. And in that silence between them, in the glances that spoke louder than any vow, she began to understand that sometimes salvation didn't come in the shape of a groom at an altar, but in the shadow of a gunslinger who had buried his past deep beneath the desert sands. The storm inside her eased, little by little. But the prairie wasn't done with her. Not yet, for a bride left in the rain is never forgotten. And men, once denied, don't forgive easy. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon and the air turned copper red, the sound of hooves thundered again. But this time, it wasn't one rider leaving. It was many coming back. The ones who thought she was nothing. The ones who thought she was theirs to take. She stood in the doorway of the shack, Elsie clutching her dress, her eyes wide but fearless. Harlan stepped from the shadows, rifle slung across his chest, hat pulled low. He looked at her once, long and hard, as though asking if she had the strength to stand. And though her dress was torn, her veil gone, and her innocence washed away in the storm, she nodded. The rain hadn't drowned her. It had forged her. And when the first shot split the air, she no longer felt like the bride abandoned in the mud. She felt like something risen. Something the prairie couldn't kill. Something even the men who left her would learn to fear.